Monsieur le Vice-Président, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it's my honor to introduce 3 reports prepared by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights addressing the scourge of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. These reports underscore the persistence of deeply entrenched patterns of discrimination, outline the work carried out by OHCHR, member states, treaty bodies, and other actors, and provide evidence-based recommendations for stronger national, regional, and international responses. They reaffirm that combating racism in all its forms remains central to this Council's mandate and to the realization of the principles of equality and dignity enshrined in the United Nations Charter and international human rights instruments. First, I am pleased to present the expert study prepared pursuant to Human Rights Council Resolutions 54/27, which requested OHCHR to take stock of how the work of various treaty bodies has contributed to the implementation of the Durban Declaration Program of Action. Originally scheduled for the 57th session, it was postponed to the 60th session due to the liquidity crisis affecting the United Nations. The Durban Declaration and Program of Action provides a comprehensive framework for addressing racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance as cross-cutting human rights issues. The study identifies key trends and illustrates how treaty bodies have contributed to the implementation of the Declaration from its inception during the World Conference Against Racism to the present. While their primary mandate is to monitor the implementation of their respective human rights treaties, treaty bodies have also advanced the implementation of the Declaration by holding states accountable for treaty obligations that align with its objectives. Through their recommendations, treaty bodies highlight states' commitments to combat racism and racial discrimination as articulated in the Durban Declaration. The Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination has consistently referred to the Declaration in its recommendations. Other treaty bodies, while addressing issues covered by the Declaration, have done so with fewer explicit references. Looking ahead, treaty bodies can strengthen their role in advancing the Declaration's holistic vision by more systematically integrating its recommendations into their work. The upcoming 25th anniversary of the Durban Declaration Program of Action in 2026 offers a timely opportunity for renewed commitment. Treaty bodies are encouraged to seize this milestone to deepen engagement with the Declaration and enhance the implementation of their mandates. States, for their part, are called upon to cooperate with treaty bodies, demonstrate political support, and provide the necessary resources to integrate the Declaration's principle into the work of the treaty bodies. This includes enhancing cooperation with the Durban follow-up mechanisms, supporting national human rights institutions and civil society, and establishing effective national monitoring systems. States should also report on the impact of measures to combat racism and racial discrimination, including providing disaggregated data collected based on self-identification. OHCHR stands ready to support treaty bodies in integrating the Durban Declaration Program of Action into their mandates and coordinating with the Durban follow-up mechanisms to more effectively address racism and racial discrimination. Next, I would like to introduce the report of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on a world of sports free from racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. The report underscores that racism and racial discrimination persist across sporting disciplines, from the grassroots and amateur levels to the highest professional arenas. Yet, too often, these injustices are not acknowledged as a systematic and structural issue rooted in colonial legacies. Instead, racism in sport is treated as a series of isolated incidents obscuring its true scale and impact. Religious groups, particularly those whose members wear visible religious symbols or attire, continue to be targeted. Anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim slurs, along with other forms of racism, remain a shameful reality. In the realm of sports practiced by persons with disabilities, racism intersects with ableism, creating distinct and entrenched barriers that demand urgent attention. Representation remains a pressing challenge, with some groups still rendered invisible in different sport arenas. Accountability and redress for victims of racism in sport are inconsistently prioritized, leaving victims without adequate redress and exposed to exclusion and profound psychological harms. While some reporting mechanisms exist, they often fail to provide effective protection, particularly where they are not accompanied by legal and psychological support. A world of sports free from racism requires confronting systematic, institutional, and structural barriers through coordinated, adequately resourced actions by states, sports actors, civil society, and the private sector. The report calls on states to address racial discrimination in sport through legislative, administrative, budgetary, and regulatory measures and the implementation of targeted plans, policies, and programs. It further urges states and sport actors to collect and analyze disaggregated data and use it to inform and strengthen effort to combat racism in sports. States and sports actors should also allocate adequate resources for the enforcement of accountability mechanisms and implementation of legislative, education, and policy measures. Equally urgent is the need to address the underrepresentation of marginalized racial or ethnic groups, both in participation in sport and within governance structures across the sport ecosystem. Additionally, social media companies should ensure transparent, rights-based content and moderation. Finally, advancing human rights education across all sectors of society remains imperative to sustain meaningful change. We look forward to continuing to build on this critical work together. Lastly, Human Rights Council resolutions 5427 and 5725 requested OHCHR to report on the implementation of its comprehensive communication strategy to continue to raise awareness about and mobilize global public support for racial justice and equality and the fight against racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. This report provides an overview of the activities undertaken by OHCHR in this regard, including under the umbrella of the hashtag Fight Racism initiative and the Learn, Speak Up, Act campaign launched by the office in 2022. Between April 23 and April 25, OHCHR developed and disseminated a range of products, including publications, videos, web content, and social media outputs in all UN official languages. Content was designed to connect the public with the United Nations anti-discrimination instruments, mandates, and mechanisms. Complex issues were made relatable through storytelling centered on the lived experiences and achievements of people of African descent, indigenous peoples, Roma communities, migrants, and human rights defenders, among others. This strategy has proven successful. Over 477 hashtag Fight Racism campaign social media posts reached more than 16 million people worldwide, and stories published under the campaign attracted nearly 120,000 viewers. OHCHR field presences and United Nations information centers actively participated in the campaign to localize messaging. Partnerships with highly visible public figures, including professional footballer and fight racism champion Vinicius Jr., further expanded outreach. The Fight Racism campaign successfully integrated the ICERT 60 initiative launched to mark the 60th anniversary of the International Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, capitalizing on this strategic opportunity and extending the campaign's reach and relevance. But challenges remain. Social media publications, including terms like racism or racial discrimination, are frequently deprioritized or suppressed, making it difficult to achieve visibility at scale. In response, OHCHR continues to adapt its digital communication strategy without compromising core messages. Further, due to the liquidity and financial crisis faced by the United Nations, some activities planned as a part of Fight Racism and Learn Speak Up Act had to be postponed or scaled down. Racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance continue to have a deeply negative impact on the enjoyment of human rights of millions globally. OHCHR and the United Nations human rights mechanisms will continue to play a central role in calling for the elimination of these scourges and for concrete action to be achieved to achieve racial justice and equality. Given the sustained demand for Fight Racism and Learn Speak Up Act materials, long-term and predictable funding is critical to sustaining public engagement and the campaign's contribution to the struggle against racism. Thank you.